Hey y'all, I am so excited to be sitting here with Shawn. Shawn is a digital transformation guru, and he just wrote a book called Digital Destiny. So we are getting the lowdown on what that means today and more about Shawn's book. So Shawn, welcome to News and Brews. How's it going?
Awesome. It's great to be here with you, Ann. So excited to be here and to talk about the future of manufacturing and the future, obviously, of digital and data.
That's amazing. And I read that you're a futurist. But for those out in the audience that are listening in today, can you give us a rundown of yourself, just a quick intro? Let us know all about you.
Sure. I'm Dr. Shawn DuBravac. I help leaders frame the future. So I help them think about the forces that are at play. I help them see some of the dynamics that are emerging and what to expect in the years ahead. I help them prepare for what's coming.
That's amazing. And I am a huge fan of futurists like yourself, and I have this podcast, Workforce 4.0, and it's talking a lot about digital transformation and the way that we work. I definitely want to unpack some of those details with you today while I've got you. But let's talk a little bit more about Digital Destiny and your process of writing that book. And I know that you mentioned this concept of digital ownership. And I didn't know if you could unpack that a little bit for us.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the role that data is playing is emerging. And I think we're actually on the cusp of the next big transformation. We've been talking about and focused on digitization over the last 2 decades, really defined the last 25 years. I think the next 25 years are going to be defined by data and the shift from digitization to datification. And so you see it playing out everywhere. You see it playing out in consumer environments where we're sensing what's happening and we're harvesting that data, and we're using that data then to tell a narrative or to in the future to make decisions, autonomous choices and other things. So when you think about data ownership, that becomes important for all of these different environments that we're in, whether you're in a healthcare setting, whether you're in manufacturing environment, whether you're in an education facility. All of these environments are capturing data, they're producing data, and that data is going to play, I think, a very important role, especially in the years ahead, in the type of activities that will happen in those areas.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I work with a lot of small, medium enterprises and businesses, manufacturing companies directly. And their biggest holdup on data is how do we leverage the data? How do we filter data? If there are any tips that you could provide to us in that regard today, how do we do that successfully for the implementation of data processes and information in a way that we take meaningful steps forward and we're successful with that?
Yeah, I think one of the great challenges in any of these environments is that we have devices, we've got machinery, we've got tools and technology, and they're often dispersed, they're separate, and so we're capturing data in lots of different places. The next big step that we need to focus on is bringing all of that data together in a uniformed way so that we can leverage the holistic value of that data. So not just letting the data sit on one computer or one machine or one X-ray machine, or that we start to gather all of that data together so that we can start to make much bigger, broader decisions at the organizational level. So we're not just making it at the device level, but that we're actually making it at the organizational level. And when we start to do that, we really start to tie data to the strategy of an organization.
Yeah, those are some great tips for sure. And when you think about data ownership, I think a lot of manufacturing companies could possibly be intimidated by data and implementing the digital transformation processes that I think that we both can agree on will be the future of work. But what are some ways that they can implement that data and own the data in a safe way? Are there any cybersecurity risks that they should be thinking of? And how do they mitigate those?
Yeah, I mean, obviously one of the great challenges when we connect these devices, when we start to harvest the data from these different technologies and devices, and then we move that information off the device to a more central location, there's always going to be cybersecurity risk at the device level and obviously at the organizational level. This is the world that we live in, the reality of the world that we live in. And I think every leader in every industry, but certainly within manufacturing, needs to be thinking about, how do I capture the data? How do I protect the data? Who do I give access to? Who has access to that data? And then how do I really take full advantage of the data? So it isn't just a cybersecurity risk. I think there's also other risks that manufacturers should be thinking about. Anybody who has data should be thinking about. It's ensuring that I'm using that data in the right way, that I'm making informed decisions, that I'm employing that data in the right spaces. There's obviously the risk that I decipher a pattern that isn't there, or I misinterpret the data and employ the data in a way that isn't valuable to the organization. So I think there's lots of risks. Clearly, cybersecurity risk is a key risk that every organization needs to be thinking about.
Yeah, that's excellent advice, Shawn. Thank you for that. And I mentioned the podcast, of course, but I am fascinated by the way that the landscape of the manufacturing workforce has evolved in the past 10 years. We had started out in conversations, and I know we just met here, Shawn, but I got my start in manufacturing in workforce development, working for the state of Kentucky for 5 years. And we were battling companies at that time, back 2012 or so, thinking about how do we implement technology. And we were having these high-level conversations and the absolute fear that technology and robots, and now we are having the same conversation with AI, on, are these things going to take our jobs? So that was a big part of why I started my podcast. But something that I would love to know from you today while I have you here is, Shawn, what's the future of work look like in 10 years?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And you can't talk about the future of technology and the future of robotics without talking about the future of work. You can't talk about the shift from digitization to datification without really thinking about the implications that has for the future of work. I still believe pretty deeply in a future of work that involves human work, where humans are playing a pivotal role. Right now, you're starting to see how we're infusing technology and especially robotics into human work. In some instances, we're augmenting human work. In some instances, we are replacing human work as we automate certain processes away, or we move robotics into an environment where historically humans did that work. I think every organization needs to think about the implications of these shifts. They need to think about, where do robots sit on my org chart? What type of roles do they have? I think even thinking about them as quasi-employees can help leaders, can help manufacturers really understand the implications and the ramifications of robots. So if I've got a logistics robot and I think about that as a logistics employee in my organization, what are the implications for the other employees on my org chart? How do I prepare them for a future where there's maybe more robots that they're interacting with? Do I provide them additional training? What are the new skill sets that they're going to need to be valuable and useful in the future? So I think there are a lot of implications for work, for human work, also for robotic work. But I think at the end of the day, we do see a world where these two dynamics will coexist. We'll have robots interacting with humans, humans interacting with robots. We'll have elements that have been automated, and we'll still have elements that are decidedly human tasks.
That's amazing, and I love that point of view and perspective. And when you're thinking about from a hiring manager perspective, and you're writing a job description, or you're thinking about succession planning, or how you're going to grow your internal workforce and your own personnel needs, do you think that we should start taking that into account, the possibility of how does this person interface with a robot next to them?
Yeah, I think we definitely need to take into account the implication for robotics in any work environment, whether that's manufacturing, healthcare, education. We will see some forms of robots. Maybe those are humanoid robots that take the form of a human and can be mobile with an environment. Maybe they're fixed robotics, but we will see more robotics. And I do think that you have to think through the implications of that on your existing workforce. Again, in some instances, it will remove certain tasks, but I also think that it will open up the opportunity for other tasks. As we automate certain skills, I think you will naturally see work change. So for example, we might have HR systems that automate some of that information flow, where an HR manager is now no longer focused on answering routine tasks because employees can get that information themselves. Now they're focused on much more strategically important information. They're focused on tasks and other activities that are much more aligned with the strategy of the organization. I think the same thing will happen at every level. So on the shop floor, as we integrate and introduce newer technologies, more advanced technologies, even automated robotics and other things like that, that you will see the shop floor start to evolve and start to change. Those workers will have to have other skill sets. So every manager, every leader within an organization will have to think through, how do I prepare these workers for a world where they are interacting with more sophisticated technology? What are the skill sets that they need to have, and how do I prepare them now?
That's excellent, Shawn. I appreciate that. I've got one more just ad hoc question for you here today. Just while I've got you, you know, when you're looking around at the robotics companies, maybe you're thinking about Boston Dynamics with their humanoid robot Atlas. Maybe you're thinking about cobots and robotic arms. I know Fanuc has one. I've got ABB's got one. Everybody's got a cobot now, it seems like. Who do you think is doing that well as far as manufacturers of robots?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still in the very early stages. I think it's far too early to call a winner because we're just barely seeing the adoption take place. I've talked with manufacturers who might have one humanoid robot in all of their facilities, and so we're just now starting to do the deployment. We're doing a lot of experimentation. We're learning. There's a lot of cross-learning that's taking place from other robotics companies, and I think we're still trying to push what's possible. We're still trying to drive to the next iteration of what it means to be a robot and what a robot can do. And so it's one of the beauties of an event like this is you get to come and see lots of robotic companies all in one place. You get to see all of the different things that they're doing. You could compare and contrast some of the advances that they've made, but I can guarantee that whatever you see this year will be decidedly different next year. We'll be back here the same place, same time. You'll see companies showing more advanced technologies, more advanced robotics, and so we're still very much on the upward trajectory on what robots will be able to do for us.
That's amazing, Shawn. And the future of work and life for humans. What do you think? Top prediction. How's this gonna make our lives better?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty optimistic. I think what you will see is that, and if you look at the way we're using generative AI today, we're using it to lift some of the cognitive loads that we do in our work. We're trying to make our work easier in some places, and that's freeing us up to focus on things that are higher value. Maybe it's things that we enjoy more. Maybe it's the things that are decidedly more human. And I think the same thing will play out in all spaces of technology. If you look at robotics, we're going to use robots in a lot of the places where humans don't want to do work or have other reasons to not do that work. Maybe it's physically demanding, maybe it's dark and dangerous and dirty. So I do think we start to use robots in those places first, and that will free humans up to focus on other work. I think we also can't underestimate the type of new jobs that will emerge. That's one of the things that we've seen in the last 50 years is that you have new work that comes to fruition as a result of technology. And so we tend to always focus on the negative externalities of automation and of technology. We worry about all the downside risks, but there's a lot of upside opportunity that happens as well.
That's amazing, Shawn. Well, thank you so much for being here with us today at MD&M West. Digital Destiny, where can we get that? And what's a good point of contact for you?
Yeah, you can obviously find the book anywhere books are sold, anywhere that you prefer to go. And you can find me, again, I'm Dr. Shawn DuBravac. You can find me at ShawnDuBravac.com.
Well, thank you so much, Shawn, again. Thank you all for hanging out with us here at the News and Brews desk from MD&M West. This is Ann Wyatt, and we're signing off.